So again, this R&R is being recorded, and just to go over our learning agreements and norms, make sure you're on mute unless you have a question or want to share an idea, or you could also put those in the chat. Our agenda today, we'll be going over learning intentions, accessing and assessing your background knowledge, reviewing our strategies. And today we're excited because we're giving you some time to actually create something that you can take and use maybe after break or maybe tomorrow. We got some 10-2s in there and some gots and wants. We'll be presenting for about an hour. And for PD Enroller, this is your claim code, which we will show also on the last slide as well. And I also wanted to mention the virtual phases of GLAD. This is a little picture of our virtual phases of GLAD bingo card. So if you're in the building teaching and you have your original phases of GLAD bingo, go ahead, get those back out if you want. You can start using them, have people check them off, or you can check them off yourself and post a picture to Facebook so we can see the awesome strategies you're doing. The virtual phases was designed for teachers to continue using GLAD strategies, but transfer those to a virtual setting. So even if you're in hybrid, you're still sending asynchronous work home, and those could be some GLAD strategies or pieces of it. So Angeline is going to put in the chat a link to a video that explains how to play, how to sign up. But what I wanted to point out is that our goal is to focus our R&Rs on the strategies listed here so that you can take those and apply them to a virtual setting. So today we'll be going over the center square, which is 3 personal standards and literacy awards.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at our learning intentions today. And just like the previous R&Rs, we are continuing with that same learning goal, really working on intellectually engaging all of our students with lessons and activities that have a discernible structure, require higher level thinking, initiate inquiry, and provide opportunity for reflection. And again, that's from Danielson 3C. Our learning target today, and if you'd like, you can read with me or just follow along. It says, I will understand how to use 3 personal standards and literacy awards in all 3 instructional modes, in person, hybrid, and remote, to reinforce positive behaviors and intrinsic motivation and to build academic vocabulary. So in order to be successful with our learning target today, we have three ideas in our success criteria. It says, I can identify 2 ways that 3 personal standards and literacy awards contribute to a positive classroom environment. I can explain how to utilize 3 personal standards and literacy awards in all 3 instructional modes. And I can create 1 to 2 literacy awards for a current or upcoming unit in work time or group and with a group share. So in order to process our success criteria today, you should be seeing a star on your screen if you clicked the interactive Pear Deck slide. And I'd like you to please drag the star to the success criteria bullet that you're most interested in doing today and in learning more about. So just take that star and you should be able to just drag it. And if you lost the link, it looks like Corey put it back there in the chat, so you can click on that as well. I'll give you about 30 seconds or less.
Okay, I'll go ahead and show some of those responsive. Go ahead and keep dragging your little star.
Excellent. So it looks like the results are about kind of what I thought. I know as teachers, we love the time to create. And so we are excited about being able to get there today. And I personally can't wait to see the group share portion of that success criteria, because then we can see all the awesome things that you have created by the end of the hour.
Yeah, that's awesome. It'll be fun to share.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so the one thing that 3 personal standards and literacy awards helps with, one of the many things, is classroom management. And so our first question that we have for you is, when thinking about classroom management, and this could be synchronous classroom management or asynchronous, what is working for you? Or what would you like to change? Or you can answer both. And so you're going to be answering these questions in Pear Deck. You'll just type your answers in, and then after a few seconds, we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at those. You can answer either question or both.
Good.
Looks like everybody's still writing, so we'll give you a few minutes before we.
Building rapport. Okay. It's disappointing to not get a response during Zoom. Yes. Even when you give them the option of using the chat.
Yep. Then building rapport of respect and knowledge of the students so they know they are valued. Yeah, that's true. So hard to do over a computer. Okay, and Scouts work very well for motivating and engaging students in the learning. I found that too, even at the secondary level. Ooh, and this one's awesome, that smaller sizes are great in hybrid learning, and it makes management even easier.
Good. Hoping to increase student involvement and recognition of peers. Yay. Well, you're in the right place because that's what we're talking about today. So yes. I've previously given out literacy awards. Excellent. Link them to classroom economy management system. Good.
And a few people have just recently entered. So in the chat, you'll find a link to Pear Deck where we are doing our interactive slides. That's what we'll be presenting from. And then there's also a link to our Google Slides presentation. So you have all of our resources.
Great.
Okay, we'll go over a couple more of these. Small class sizes again are helping with management. Individual breakout rooms to talk about assignments, grade, and just life to make connections.
Okay.
Okay, and using Google Share and Pear Deck to keep track of who is actually working in Zoom. That's awesome. One of the things we learned from Reimagine learning is to have evidence of engagement. So just because a student might be in your Zoom, if we don't have evidence of engagement, we don't know if they're actually doing anything, but maybe they are really engaged and maybe they are working, but if we don't have that evidence of engagement, we'll never know. Okay, well, thank you for responding. Some of the unique classroom management challenges we have now. One of them is perhaps a lack of classroom management tools for remote and asynchronous learning. Some of you may have had experience teaching in a remote environment prior to everybody being sent home, but I think for the majority of us, we didn't. And so we were left trying to figure out how are we going to do all this? And I'm sure we've all done research, we've attended PD, but still it's not something that we're very experienced at because that's not how we were taught to teach. So that's one of our challenges. Another challenge for some of our students is simply the poverty mindset. And that is just really, children with the poverty mindset feel that life is done to them and they have absolutely no control over their choices or what happens to them. And so they often give up. And so when we give them an assignment, they don't have control over it and they feel like they just either want to fight back or they want to give up. And it's really hard to break through that mindset if we aren't seeing our students in our classrooms and having, like a face-to-face relationship with them. And another unique classroom management challenge we have right now is this idea of attendance versus engagement. We know from teaching face-to-face that students can be sitting in front of us, but are not engaged at all. But now we're presented with this new instructional model where some of our students are completely engaged and you may not see them on your Zoom because they're camera is off, or maybe they didn't attend, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're not engaging with the work that you're sending. So it's just this idea of, is attendance engagement? Do they have to attend to be engaged? And so that's just another piece of our classroom management that we're all trying to figure out. So we have a multiple choice question here for you. Our question is, which of these do you feel is your biggest challenge right now? And in Pear Deck, you can go ahead and choose, I think I put in there the options, or lack of classroom management tools, poverty mindset, or attendance versus engagement. Which one is most prevalent in your classroom or amongst your students right now? I'll go ahead and show those. We still have more responses coming in. Okay, so it looks like attendance versus engagement and poverty mindset seem to be our biggest challenges right now.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to see that the classroom management tools is not a challenge. So yes, like we can celebrate.
Yes, but we got that down. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for participating.
Okay. So we're going to take a look at, or just kind of discuss for a quick moment about the first component within GLAD, which is focus and motivation. So if you'll remember when you went through your training, there are 5 components of GLAD. And this first one, focus and motivation, is really, really important because we know as teachers that motivation plays a key role in learning, right? And with that, kind of like Corey was mentioning earlier, we really need to consider acknowledging engagement. And so kind of looking at that old mindset of attendance versus engagement, we used to maybe assume if a student is attending that they're engaged. And we know that that is no longer the case, especially if you are in remote learning right now. And so we really need to think about what strategies are we using to help motivate students, to help activate their background knowledge, and to help them really understand that they're being viewed as an asset. And so that asset mindset where every student has something to contribute is really important in helping students to feel a part of the classroom community, whether you're face-to-face, in hybrid, or in remote learning. And so today we want you to consider acknowledging engagement with literacy awards and using our 3 personal standards to help guide your classroom management, both face-to-face and in remote learning. And if you choose to do this, I hope that you'll really see that your students will be encouraged to participate. A lot of you are saying that one of the challenges that you're facing right now is just that engagement piece, especially on Zoom, we know is a huge challenge. And so these 2 strategies that we're going to discuss today, although very simple, have a really great impact in improving that engagement piece within our classroom and helping students to see themselves as assets to the classroom, that they all have something to contribute. Okay.
So why would we use the 3 personal standards? First, if you do have a learning guide, because you've been GLAD trained, the 3 personal standards are on pages 31 and 32. And our 3 personal standards are kind of like our classroom rules. And they're listed here. I always say them in this order: show respect, solve problems, and make good decisions. And the rationale behind the strategy is that it explicitly focuses and reinforces students' positive behavior so that students can articulate those behaviors, so that they can say, I was showing respect because I, and then fill in the blank. So we're really getting that tape player in their minds to focus on the positive. And it also encourages intrinsic motivation because as they get those thoughts in their minds, that's what they're striving for. Using these 3 personal standards in remote, hybrid, and face-to-face all across the board can create consistency for your students. so that you're not having a set of rules in each different type of instruction. And then also using these focuses on their positive behavior rather than the negative, and also just in general positivity. I used these as my classroom personal standards or rules when I was teaching high school, and it really just ingrains even in the older kids, you know, thinking of being cognizant of how they're acting and am I making a good decision? I can solve this problem by myself, and then showing respect not only to the adults but also to each other as classmates. So I did a little research and we have another multiple choice question for you. And this question is based on a Vanderbilt study from 2009. And I want to know, what do you think is the recommended ratio of praise to reprimand? So what do you think is the recommended ratio of praise to reprimand, according to this one study? You can go ahead and choose one of your options, and then we will reveal the answer. Okay, about 20 of you responded, so I'll go ahead and show those.
Okay.
Okay, so A got 10 to 1, or A is 10 to 1, got 16 votes, 5 for B, 1 for C. The answer, according to this study, was actually B, 4 to 1. That in your classroom, to encourage a positive classroom environment, you should be praising, well, not just praising, but using positive reinforcement with your students 4 times more than negative comments or reinforcement. 10 to 1 might even be better. So all of you optimists, that's awesome.
Yes.
But at least 4 to 1. Okay. And so, Angeline, did you want to talk about literacy awards?
Okay, sure. So when we think about literacy awards, we kind of have already been discussing, why should we use them? And in your learning guide, you will see several different examples of literacy awards on pages 33 through 38. But the main rationale for using literacy awards is to really reinforce students' positive behavior and and increase that intrinsic motivation through the use of the 3 personal standards. So the 3 personal standards and literacy awards are paired strategies. We use them simultaneously. And we discussed a little bit earlier about how we want to increase engagement and we want to really promote that positive behavior within our classroom, whether that be in a face-to-face brick and mortar, or whether that be like many of us are right now is in remote learning. How are we reinforcing what we want our students to be seeing and doing? And how are we reinforcing that behavior? So according to that study, every interaction, we need 4 positives for every negative. And so literacy awards are really going to help us to reinforce the positive behavior that we want our students to be exhibiting in all areas that we see in the classroom. So it's also going to introduce and reinforce that academic language, because in our literacy awards, we're going to be embedding all of that higher level academic language that students need practice using and seeing and reading and using in their writing as well. And so another benefit of literacy awards is to really extend the learning and the literacy that's happening in your classroom and provide motivation for students to become more involved in your classroom and your learning processes.
Okay, so how would we facilitate through personal standards and literacy awards in a synchronous setting? So this would be whether you're in the classroom, or you could think about it also on Zoom. So let's start with the 3 personal standards. I put this hand here holding up 3 fingers because research shows that when you have students doing the actions and touching their fingers as they say the 3 personal standards, then that helps reinforce that brain imprinting of those words and those actions. So whether you're on Zoom or in person, you always want to have your fingers held up and instruct your students, no matter how old they are, to touch each finger. So we want to show respect, solve problems, and make good decisions. And there's a picture of a teacher here who is doing that with her class. And this can be done over a video monitor, or it can be done in person. And when I was teaching, or when you're instructing or doing any type of activity, you always want to remind students of these 3 personal standards, so it's right in the forefront of their mind. Also, you're going to want to either with your students decide what each of those 3 personal standards looks like and sounds like, or you're going to want to have them model it, or you can model it, or give examples so that they really get a feel for what showing respect looks like, or what making good decision looks like. So a good decision in a Zoom setting, you might give your students the example of participating either on a shared slide or in the chat, so that you are eliciting some participation from them. When you or a scout notice that the students are accomplishing those 3 personal standards, that's where the literacy award comes in. And the literacy awards, there's an example here. This one simply says, "Thank you for following directions." It has a picture of Jackie Robinson. This was part of our literacy or civil rights unit. And then it talks a little bit about him using academic language. So the trait of any literacy award is that it relates to your unit or topic that you're studying. There's high academic language, and really this information extends beyond what you've taught in your class. It's just more tidbits that your class can add to their knowledge bank. This here is a literacy award of, it's just a picture of an input chart for factors and multiples for math. And so, as I said before at the very beginning, you can even just take a picture of your input chart or a processed input chart so that students have that right in front of them when they're doing their work. This picture here was from my classroom. I taught like a junior, senior Spanish class. It was an honors class. And this gal was working on her performance task, which was an essay to compare and contrast different celebrations in Spain. And in order for her to accomplish this, she had earned these 2 literacy awards here. This was reinforcing the past tense and how to use that. And this one was reinforcing comparing and contrasting language. So I would say that the key to using literacy awards in the secondary setting, because at this point, the secondary students don't always want to collect little things like baseball cards, but if you put information on there that is very important for them to have to accomplish their end of unit performance task, they will get them out, they will strive to use them, and they will really strive to do those 3 personal standards so that they're earning those tools so that they can accomplish those performance tasks. Other ideas for literacy awards, this one here looks like a little booklet. So students could take notes maybe while you're doing some sort of input chart. This one looks like a chant. So you can just take one of your chants, type it up, put a picture with it from your picture file cards. This one looks like an input chart that somebody took a picture of. So really anything that would motivate your students to want to earn those so that they can learn them later on in the unit.
Okay, so anytime we are in a teaching environment, we always go over the 3 personal standards. And what we know is that we explicitly need to teach what we want our students to do, right? No matter the age group, we have to set those expectations for our students, and no matter what kind of learning environment we're in. So again, whether we're face-to-face or whether we're in remote synchronous learning, we need to explicitly teach what we want our students to be doing. So one thing that I know we've all struggled with is during remote learning is that engagement piece, or maybe breakout rooms, getting students to follow those directions and participate. And so one way to have a better experience with that and really help students to be more productive in remote synchronous learning is to definitely explicitly teach what behaviors that you're looking for explicitly with Zoom. I know a lot of you here today may not be participating in Zoom, but the same standards apply for you in your regular classroom. It would just not, you wouldn't identify what 3 personal standards look like in Zoom, but maybe you would identify what do the 3 personal standards look like during direct instruction, for example. And so just to kind of get us thinking about how this might look, and maybe you've already done this with your students, I want you to think, what would 3 personal standards look like in Zoom, for example, because I do know that that was one of the main challenges that some of you discussed earlier today. If we want our students to participate, if we want them to be active learners, if we want them to show respect during Zoom, what exactly is that going to look like or sound like? So before we go to the next slide, what I'd like you to do is choose one or all of these sentence frames. And I want you to just kind of brainstorm if you were teaching appropriate Zoom behavior using the 3 personal standards. So what would showing respect look like? What would solving problems look or sound like? Or what would making good decisions look or sound like? What are some of the things you would want to elicit from your students? And go ahead and just type that in. So again, you can choose one or you can choose a couple of those.
I'll go ahead and leave these up so you have access to the sentence frames for another few seconds, and then we'll go and check out some of the responses.
Excellent. And again, the reason that we're kind of having you go through this process is because we just want to preface the idea here that anytime we expect certain behavior from students, we have to be explicitly teaching that. And so we always want to have in our mind, what are the behaviors that fall under our 3 personal standards that we want students to be exhibiting, and how are we going to make sure that they understand those 3, or how are they going to understand the 3 personal standards within each educational setting?
Mm-hmm. And one other note is that you always want to frame these in the positive. So instead of saying showing respect during Zoom looks like, or maybe saying showing respect doesn't look like having your video off or something, you always want to frame it in the positive. That helps with that positivity. Okay, we're going to bounce over to some of the responses. So respect looks like keeping chat comments on topic and moving the class forward. Awesome. Solving problems looks like coming up with a way for everyone in your breakout room to participate, even if their camera is not on. Good idea. And making decisions looks like, or good decisions, looks like being sure you have your Zoom space free of distractions. Good.
Excellent.
And maybe even asking the students, what are some distractions that could distract you in your Zoom space?
Yes.
Okay, showing respect would look or sound like video on, unmute, yep, if you're eliciting a response. Problem solving looks or sounds like in breakout rooms, sharing the screen, gathering information. Awesome. Down here. One biggie for us is when they get in class, I say their name and good morning. We've had to talk about how it is respectful to engage in conversation when someone acknowledges you. Yeah. So all students are expected to answer and acknowledge that greeting. That's awesome. And that's a positive thing, just to greet somebody, ask them how they're doing. I love that. Okay, sounds like staying muted when it is not your turn to talk and asking questions when you need to. Choosing appropriate photos and words as you interact. Good. Solving problems during Zoom looks like asking for help in the chat or unmuting when you are lost or confused. Making good decisions during Zoom sounds like being ready to answer questions when called on, either unmuting or using the chat. Good.
Great.
Looks like you all have similar ideas. So we all know what it's supposed to look like.
Right.
And maybe you've shared some of these with your students, and maybe you just haven't. And I would encourage you, even if you haven't been using the 3 personal standards, it's okay to just start now. When I was GLAD trained, I thought these were awesome ideas. And I just went back to my classroom and just started using them and say, oh, we're just doing something new from now on. And the students, once they learn it, they just do it. Okay.
Yeah. And even sometimes we just forget. And an example of that is right now I have the opportunity to go into multiple classes, even during remote learning and modeling lessons, and even in my own class. So I teach one advisory class. And the other day I was super irritated because we'd gone over expectations a while back and we'd been reinforcing the 3 personal standards, but one of my students was just kept laying down in bed. I'm sure a lot of you, when you were Zooming, or if you are now, you're remembering that, where they're laying in bed and you see the ceiling and not really engaged. And I was super irritated. And it was my view, it was my own fault because I didn't go over the 3 personal standards for what showing respect would look like. And I didn't elicit any of those ideas from my students. And so it's easy to forget, but a lot of times, as soon as we remind our students, no matter their age, what the 3 personal standards are and what they look like and sound like in all these different settings, as soon as we do that, then that behavior kind of fixes itself, so to say, or so to speak. And so just, even though I've been doing this for a long time, I find that sometimes if I'm forgetting and there's a behavior that I don't want to see in my students, a lot of times it's simply because I haven't explicitly gone over the 3 personal standards. So it's just a reminder that, okay, yeah, what does showing respect in Zoom look like? It's going to look like sitting up, for example. So on the next slide, we have the same 3 personal standards slide here, but what you see here is on the Zoom rules. And this was something that the district sent out with, rules for Zooming. And they're really great ideas, and not to knock them at all, but there's a lot of things on here for kids to remember. And so if we take those Zoom rules and we just simply put them in our 3 personal standards, showing respect. Well, what does showing respect look like and what does it sound like? And the numbers there next to showing respect, number 1, 4, 6, 7, and 8, those are all the Zoom rules that we have for our students. But the idea is just that with just these 3 personal standards, everything can fit under them. And it's just a lot less for students to have to remember, and a lot less complicated, but it's still really important to identify the behaviors that we want to see our students exhibiting. So this just kind of shows really any rule or procedure that you have in your classroom via virtual or face-to-face can fall under these 3 personal standards. And we just need to make sure that we're having those discussions with our kids.
So once you've established the 3 personal standards and what those look like and sound like, that's where the literacy awards come in, because students earn the literacy awards based on them demonstrating the 3 personal standards. And so we've taken a look at what the literacy awards in face-to-face instruction look like. They kind of look like little bookmarks or little booklets. And obviously, if we are teaching in a remote setting, we don't have the opportunity to give our students anything. However, there is a way to do it. So when you're designing your virtual literacy awards, you use basically the same principles. You still want pictures on there, you still want high academic language, and you still want information that will extend your students' learning. So during a remote setting, when a student earns a literacy award, and I'll show you a couple examples here in a minute, you could send it to them via Google Classroom or Seesaw individually. You could do this as an assignment that doesn't have due date or points or anything under a topic of literacy award. Angeline and I were thinking yesterday when we were preparing that you could even have, while you're doing your direct instruction or your synchronous time with your students on Zoom, in Google Classroom, you can assign individual students assignments. You could even just have that list up. And as you're noticing your students accomplishing the 3 personal standards, you always want to explicitly say what the standard is and what they were doing to show that. So for example, Angeline, I noticed that when I asked for some responses to my question, you typed a couple answers in the chat, and I really appreciate that. That was making a good decision. And in Google Classroom, you could just click to assign her one of your literacy awards. And then when you're done with the class, you can just click the button to assign all of them. I do want to show you what some of these look like. So I took some of the literacy awards that we had previously created for face-to-face instruction, and I found that virtual literacy awards are actually more interactive and more fun. So this one was a thank you for following directions literacy award. And previously, I think it just had this picture on it, but I added another picture, gave some captions, and gave a fact about Ruby Bridges, and then also included a video that the students could watch about her first day of school at an integrated school for our civil rights unit. And I did it on Google Slides. It's just one slide. And we always recommend that for literacy awards, you introduce a new one at least once per week. And so this I would introduce at the beginning of the week saying, oh, hey students, this is our new literacy award. And so if they earned one that week, this is what it would look like. And going back here, here's another one for math. So this one just had a picture of an input chart, the definition of what a multiple is, and then a link to a game so that they could practice their multiples, and then also a song where students could listen to the 7 times tables to a popular, now probably older song. But hey, it's still fun, right?
Yeah.
So also you could, once you have established this practice, you've established literacy awards, you've established the 3 personal standards, you could also try using Scouts on Zoom as well. And we've heard of some teachers doing that, and it seems to work well. But again, it's something that you have to teach and reteach possibly so that they understand what their expectations are for earning the literacy award and also being a Scout.
And I think what Corey, one thing I just want to add really quickly is a key, especially with older students, is just making sure that the literacy awards are needed, are kind of a coveted item, again, whether face-to-face or in remote learning. And so, and maybe you were planning on mentioning this later, Corey, but one thing that I know works really well is if students collect, maybe you have a 5-week unit. And so if students collect all 5 literacy awards, they can turn or exchange those for a free assignment, or they can use those on an assessment that they may be having, or they can turn it in for some sort of privilege that they would be excited about earning. So really just making it relevant for the students is going to help with your buy-in. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is just anytime we can acknowledge students for what they're doing positively, right, is always going to help with that motivation, which is really important in any learning environment. And then Corey, did you talk about the Scouts on Zoom?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, sorry, I had an interruption. Somebody came. I was trying to multitask. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And we had a couple questions in the chat. So someone asked, do you drop the slide in their Google Classroom or add it in an already established Google slide presentation? I suppose you could do it either way. In my mind, I was thinking in Google Classroom to create a topic that was literacy awards and just assign that material to individual students. I guess I would be afraid if you added it to an assignment, the student kind of might lose track of where it was. But it also depends on your management system. That's just how I think about it. But if it works better for you a different way, then that's awesome. And then another teacher asked, how do you accomplish using 3 personal standards when your school already has expectations? We have pride expectations. Angeline, do you guys have a behavior system at your school?
We have, we use the same 3 personal standards, and then we typically have Chinook bucks when students are here on campus. And so what we do here is simply when a student earns a Chinook buck, they'd also earn a literacy award. So like if they earn pride points, that could also be, they could also earn a literacy award. But I would say, within your pride expectations, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chantal, but within your pride expectations, these 3 personal standards are probably underlying. And so you could still reinforce your pride expectations. You know, what does that look like in each teaching or each learning environment? So the idea would just be really continuously reinforcing the positive with the literacy award that would be something that students would really want in order to help them succeed academically and just for that acknowledgement piece. So whether it be just the 3 personal standards or if your school has like this, in this case, the pride expectations, I would say that you could replace the 3 for the 5 for pride. What would you say would you say the same thing to that, Corey?
Yeah. And we've had a lot of teachers in different schools that use different behavior systems, and they've really just had to be creative about how to marry those two. But yeah, I think all of your ideas are similar to what I've heard throughout the district. Okay.
Yay. Okay, so for the creating part, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so we are going to give you a little time and you have a choice board. And so you can choose one of these 3 activities. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be sent to your own breakout room so that you have a little quiet creation time. And once you get there, you're going to choose one of the options on the choice board that you're seeing there. So you can either, when you get to your own breakout room, you can either create a virtual literacy award for a unit that you're doing or plan on doing in the future. Or you could choose to do the 3 personal standards planning sheet. So maybe there are areas within your brick and mortar or within your remote learning situations that you really need to explicitly teach those 3 personal standards. So this could be a planning sheet that you choose to fill out. Or the last option is to create a traditional literacy award for in-person learning. And you're going to have about 12 minutes to complete one of these 3 things. And then when we come back, you're going to share out your creation with the group. And so, Corey, do you want to click on the template there just so we can kind of, yeah, that one. Perfect. Thank you. So if you choose option 1 to create a literacy award, we would just ask that you put your grade level, the unit that you're designing it for, and what topic it is, because that way when we send, we can hopefully share these and we could all use them if we'd like. And we just ask that if you choose this, if you notice that somebody's working on, for example, slide 1, that you go to a different slide that's not occupied. And then you can fill out, you can import pictures, resources, videos, kind of however you want to make the interactive literacy award. The other option, so option 2, again, was the 3 personal standards planning sheet. So again, maybe you're going to take this time to focus on some areas that your students are going to, and we know coming back after a break, we always need to reinforce some of those expectations. So maybe you're noticing some areas that your kids really need a little reminder of what showing respect, making good decisions, or solving problems are like. So here you could just, this is sort of like your brainstorm sheet of ones that you want your students or that you plan on teaching when you come back. So the teaching situation at the top, that's just for you to tell us, would this be during a Zoom session, or would this be during direct instruction, or is this during, lining up for recess, or is this, how do you take care of your personal needs, like needing to use the restroom and sharpen your pencil and things like that. So whatever your teaching situation is, you would put that there, and then you would just brainstorm what showing respect looks like and sounds like within that teaching situation, so that you have a plan for teaching it to your students. And then the third option is creating the traditional literacy award. So the traditional ones with pictures, and then this would be something you could send to print shop and cut out, and physically hand to students when they are exhibiting the 3 personal standards. A lot of time, but hopefully you got a start on creating one that you can possibly use. And then you have access to those templates so you can make a copy and see other people's ideas as well.
Okay, so we have 1 minute left. We're sorry. We were talking about how every time we schedule extra time, we never have extra time. So if you have to go, we totally understand. If you can stay on and would like to share and finish up, we would love it. So if, oh dear, if you were in room 17 and you remember that you were in room 17, what we'd like you to do is please let us know which of these 3 options you were working on, and then we will go to that and we want you to show and tell your creation. So room 17.
And Corey, if you click on your breakout room button,
Yeah.
it should, like on the bottom of your controls, it should show who is in every breakout.
Yes.
I think that might have been me, but I can't remember for sure. I didn't pay attention to my number.
Yeah, it was. So Amy, can you share, what were you working on?
I was working on traditional literacy award.
We will head over that way. Do you know, well, we'll open
I
it.
think I was on the second page
Okay.
of the document.
Okay.
Oh, but it looks like some of my stuff might have disappeared. Oh, there it is. Okay. So we have a sound unit that we're starting when we come back from break, and this is the first year that we've taught this kit. So I was working on some literacy awards for that unit.
Okay, awesome. And it looks like you have some, yeah, you highlight or bolded your academic
Yeah.
language. Good
I
idea.
love it. Those are great.
And have guiding questions for your title. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Love it. And we made these shared documents so that you guys, I mean, if there's a couple teachers in the same grade level at the same topic, you guys can use the same ones. Or if, I mean, maybe even if you're teaching second grade, that second grade teacher has a great idea of what to do for a literacy award.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh, I removed room 20. I don't know how I did that. So room 20, are you in the house?
So I missed the instructions, but I went to just go work on some of my literacy awards, the traditional literacy awards for the next units I have coming up.
Okay.
So I can share my screen if you want and show you what I was working on, or I can just tell you about it.
Here, I will, let's see. Okay, go ahead and share.
All right. So we just finished up Native Americans of the Northwest, and we are moving on to the Oregon Trail and the Whitmans. So I was just looking up to see how I can take these literacy awards that I already have and make them a little bit better. So about the Cayuse Native Americans, lived on the Whitmans, lived in the land where Marcus and Narcissa Whitman came, and then let's see here about the Whitman massacre, and then Lewis and Clark, and then Whitman's up here. So that's what I have already. I'm just trying to figure out how to make it a little bit better.
Awesome.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Mhm.
Yeah, I love it. And okay, now I'm gonna go back and share my screen. Okay, we are skipping that part. So the last thing, first of all, again, thank you all for being here. We know you're super busy, and we appreciate your time and attention. A couple things, so down here on, for PD verification for federal programs, that's who funds GLAD. If you could scan this QR code and fill out the form, that's just how federal programs keeps track of their funding. Also, I cannot grab that link. Angeline, did you already put that link?
Gots and Wants link?
No, the one that's under the QR code.
Oh, Yes, sorry. I will do that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We can also, we'll put that in the chat and you can just click on it and fill out the form on your computer if you want. So if you could just, and the QR code and the link are the same thing. Also for the Gots and Wants, we do have a Jamboard, and I believe Angeline already put that link in the chat. And so there, if you could use the sticky note on Jamboard to put one got, something you can take away from this R&R, and then one want on a sticky note, that really does help us plan for the next R&Rs or trainings that we do. And then the claim code is down here if you need that. And Angeline and I were talking, we realized that we didn't address much what Scouts were or how to use Scouts. So if you want to stay on and you have questions about that, we'd be happy to answer those questions or any other questions you might have about GLAD in any instructional model.
Yes. Yeah, and one of you I know had said you were hoping to increase student engagement by peer-to-peer recognition, and that would really be through Scouts. So we're happy to explain that, but we know you probably have another meeting to go to. So we keep you if you are good to go with that. So in the chat again, there's the Gots and Wants Jamboard. There's two slides, one's Gots, and then the next slide over is Wants. And that will really just help us to kind of provide, hopefully, the R&Rs that you are needing and wanting, and then the attendance verification there. Awesome. Thank you for the awesome feedback. I have it pulled up here. We've got a good reminder to go over rules and expectations. Awesome. Got a great format for electronic literacy awards. Yay. Some great strategies for using literacy awards in a Zoom setting. Great. Got great ideas for virtual literacy awards and how to use them. It was great to have time to work and create literacy awards today. Thank you. I loved the ideas for both virtual and hybrid. Looking forward to the next one. Awesome, good. Using my T-graph for social skills and 3 standards to create literacy awards. Fantastic. I want more time to make more virtual literacy awards. Excellent. I'm sorry that we ran out of time today for that. Okay. I got to set up my 3 personal standards, what respect, problem solving, making good decisions looks and sounds like. I will definitely do this when we come back in January. Awesome. Yeah. And we always know that after those big long breaks, it's super important to readdress our expectations with students. Want more ways to adapt GLAD strategies to the virtual realm. Okay, great. And we're going to be doing that with our virtual phases of GLAD. So for the next R&R, we'll be continuing that. So hopefully we'll see you then. Okay. Looks like Becky was doing literacy awards for students in the online learning academy. Great. Doing one for perseverance. Nice, but need some brain power from others. Okay, so if you have perseverance ideas for literacy awards, send them Becky's way. And for those of you signing off, again, thank you all very much for joining us. Have a great vacation, a much needed break. If you need any help or ideas for any of literacy awards or how to reinforce them, just reach out to us. Okay, how do I share out my literacy awards? I made my own copy. Oh, fantastic. What you could do, so Corey, if Chantel just emails us her literacy awards, could we if you email them real quick, then I could put the link in the chat. That could work, or we could email them out too. And if you're interested in them, people could email us and we would be happy to send them out if you're willing to share them. Would that be okay? Awesome. Yeah. Good. Yay. Thanks, Nicole. We are too, Chantel. So glad you're here. Thank you. And Karen, I know you're